Hello, everyone. Another day, another discourse. Welcome back to the fourth episode of Drivers Discourse, a podcast featuring intense discussions on burning topics of video games, old and new. Today I'm joined by fraufraw, Moxie, and Retrorage for a very cool topic that we came up with very recently regarding video games as a leisurely activity and how it affects our perceptions of things in those games, like whether it's the content of the games or the features that the game builds itself around, things like that. And there's a whole host of things that can be impacted from this. But Mox and I had a conversation not long ago that was talking about how when you have limited time to game in your day, in your routine or whatever, you might see certain mechanics that feel like an intrinsic quote unquote time waste as something that gets in the way of like, your ability to have fun with the limited time session that you have. And yeah, Moxie, if there's anything you'd like to pick off from that.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to start by just explaining a little bit about myself because I think that's a little bit pertinent to the topic.
Hmm.
Um, so I currently work as a software engineer at a company, and I do have a lot of hobbies or interests outside of just like gaming, right? I like to bake sometimes. I like to play drums a lot. I like to work out. I like sleeping, right? So it's all these things that compete with video games for both my time and my energy, and so that leads to I think that leads to me like being harsher on certain things than others because it's always like, oh, games have to prove to me that they're worth doing over these other things that I already enjoy doing and I know are good for me. Um, for example, I guess I'll start with like Monster Hunter World. I remember I've always wanted to like try that game. And then I played the game, and the first 45 minutes were just like, first of all, the first 45 minutes had like 30 minutes of unskippable cutscenes and then like basic cinematic gameplay or whatever. And after a certain point, I was like, I don't like the game isn't even gonna allow me to skip cutscenes for like an action, monster hunting type game. I'm like I don't want to waste my time with this, so I just returned it immediately. And so I think for other people, like it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but for me, it was one of those things where I was just like, hell no, I'm not gonna do that. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
I think unskippable cutscenes in general are frowned upon nowadays. I don't really think anyone defends them anymore. And
no,
mhm,
yeah, no one defends that, but I mean, this is a game that came out in 2018. I'm kind of shocked that they let that game fly in like the mid 2010s and then was like, oh yeah, we just don't need to give the player the ability to skip through all the cutscenes. I'm like, why? That's silly.
yeah, and I guess to establish a bit of background, which I know one of the three of you can expand upon. Um, Games at a certain time point, like maybe before the 2000s, were not necessarily like, filled with tons of content or maybe didn't brand themselves as such. So they had to really like squeeze out as much as they could with the limited amount of space on the cartridge or space on the disc or whatever.
Or memory, right? Can't
Right.
store too much in memory, or else you're gonna completely crash your system.
Yeah. So they had these constraints that they had to work under. And one of the ways to work within these constraints is to incorporate like padding basically, right? And
Mhm.
I know padding is seen negatively typically. Padding can be a good thing, but it depends on what the padding incorporates. Like
Yeah,
is it meaningful gameplay that people find fun, or is it just literally there to just extend the playtime so that it feels like you got good value for the money you spent on the game? And this was like a
yeah,
very important concept for games in the 90s where they didn't want you to beat the game before the rental period finished, right? So it was like, okay, uh, there's, let's say, unskippable cutscene, as we mentioned already, or let's say there's mandatory backtracking that doesn't add any additional progress along the way. These things were intrinsic to old school games. And anything that we see in modern games that still include these things is probably less justified in its inclusion And if they're doing it as a means of padding out the game to justify a $60 price tag, it might indicate mm, amateurishness in the development process, which maybe was a result of cut content, or maybe the idea is not being fully fleshed out in the way the director expected at first, or just development hell, which can happen when you switch studios, things of that nature. We saw a recent example with Metroid Prime 4, where that game requires you to go and collect the green crystals as part of the final stretch late game cleanup, and that's like the least interesting gameplay in the game by a lot of people's perspectives, no matter whether you're a working person or not. And it's also something that is strongly deviant from the typical Metroid formula. So when the news broke out that the game incorporated such a large desert where it forced you to do all this silly running around for green crystals with an annoying NPC yapping in your ear every 10 minutes or whatever, I think that got on a lot of people's, like that irked a lot of people basically. And I'm sure no matter whether you're a working person or not, you can have a perspective on this that mm, is based on like what you want out of a game. Now,
Yeah.
do any of you have anything you want to expand upon that?
I think
Feel like
sorry, Retrorage, you go first.
it's just the padding out, dude. Is that are I'm trying to think? Are companies really trying to pad out gameplay time in the modern age?
Yes. Yes. Because it looks bad if you sell a $60 or $70 game and it has 10 hours. And you can beat it in 10 hours pretty easily,
Yeah,
for the
okay.
most
I feel
part.
like the player base expecting, in my opinion, I think that's actually a bad culture in
It's
gaming
actually
right now,
harmful. I do agree. It's very harmful.
right? Like to be like, oh yeah, it's not worth $70 if it's only got 80 hours of gameplay content. I absolutely disagree with that
Yeah.
notion, or any notion of saying like, oh, it has short gameplay time, it's not worth some amount of money, right? That's
Yeah.
why we have all the slop nowadays, right? All the indie game slop from roguelikes is derivative of this idea, where people are like, I could get infinite playtime if it's just randomly generated, right? It's randomly generated. This is why you don't see very many like non-rogue light or like indie games, right? Most of all the most famous indie games that have succeeded in recent times are almost all roguelikes, right? Or rogue light more specifically.
Yeah.
And that's been like the thing for the last 15 years. And I am of the opinion that it's because people think, oh, it only has 10 hours of gameplay time, not worth $70, $60 or whatever I'm paying for. And I just want to point out that like I think that's a bad thing in gaming, like the gaming community. That's
Yeah.
actually making developers make worse games overall. Which is why I don't think like padding is like, if they are adding padding, it's not because they think it's a good thing. It's just they're trying to cater to this bad thing that exists in the gaming community, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's this perception in the gaming community about like dollar per hour or whatever that that developers want to try to cater to. And it actively makes for games that feel like they're just wasting your time. Um, and what was I gonna say? In terms of like the perspective, like what it's like when you're pretty busy in your life or when you're not busy in your life, anyone can like have a perspective on what padding is, but I think it's just like, at the stage of your life where you're at, your perspective on those things will change. Because I think when I was in college, I probably wouldn't have cared about the Monster Hunter World thing as much. Um, or I wouldn't have cared about a lot of like padding as much because it's like, oh, I don't go to class. I just go out, drink with my friends, do my homework, and like that's about it. But and so that perspective can shift from like, oh, is the padding like a good thing, is a bad thing, or whatever, is the padding like forgivable, or is the padding like completely unforgivable, is gonna kill a game? That stuff can change over time, right?
You
The
know,
thing with like a
sorry.
quality of life, you know, like it's if you're like constantly, some people might not notice, especially if you're not like super busy, like when you're trying to wrestle with an inventory all the time.
Mhm.
But for me, I'm just like, when I was playing The Witcher 3, um, one of the things in that game that I was just like, why did you think this was a good idea was the inventory, mainly in the armors and weapons, because some weapons and armor are 2 slots, and some armor and like accessories are 1 slot, and trying to navigate between um, the inventory when it's just like, oh, I can't really tell if I hit left where this is gonna go. Um, an interesting experience, and it was one where I was just like, I don't know if this was the best thing to do, and I was definitely like, I'm definitely much more critical of that aspect than I think most people would be. It's like, for most people, it's not a big deal, but for me, I'm just like, come on, like, can I just go through my inventory properly?
Yeah.
Do we have to do this like 1 grid, 2 grid system, whatever?
Yeah. There is a pretty large size crowd of people that could see a lot of these things, like these features, not even as quality of life, but just as like part of the game. Like I say quality of life, but like quality of life or not. Right. For
Yeah.
example, like, Hollow Knight requiring you to buy the map or whatever. Like find the map
Hmm.
guy, buy the map. A lot of people just see these as like built-in features with the game. I mean, even the developers of Hollow Knight themselves see them as features that the world informs them of to put inside the game, right? As opposed to things that they themselves make a conscious choice to put in the game. And
Yeah, they think
obviously,
it's like intrinsic
yeah,
to the game as a whole. Okay.
yeah, like a critical component. And
Mm.
there's various dimensions to that, right? And one thing I was thinking about is that, okay, if you want to play the side that looks at padding positively, right? The side that looks at it
Like stuff
positively,
that feels like time wasting,
yeah,
not just padding, but for me, it like the stuff that people will say like, "Oh, you're just wasting my time."
yeah,
You know?
yeah. I mean, there's some aspects of wanting to elongate like the amount of playtime someone can get out of your game,
Yeah.
um, that are seen or potentially seen as positive, right? Some things
Mhm.
like, if a game adds like a DLC update with like a new area and more content, more bosses and stuff, people that
Yeah.
like are in the camp of, oh, I love this game already, and this DLC update is like more of the same. So like this is
Yeah,
really
but that's
nice.
not like,
Hmm.
time wasting, right? That's not like padding, because padding's a bit of a loaded term in a sense. It already has, I think, in some circles, it might have a negative connotation of like, oh, you're just like putting fluff into the game with no substance, right?
Yeah.
And that like it's not the same if you like add new content or whatever. You like, I don't know, you I don't know, you make the game hard. You have to like go through it over and over. It's like that might not be padding. Um, that might just be like, you know, uh, like that might just be the game or whatever. That might not be a time thing. It might just be like, oh, the game wants to add something new, or they want to make the game hard. That's okay.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm just trying to play the other angle for a second.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think I think a lot of updates that are made post launch to a game that change aspects of a first playthrough person's experience in a non-trivial manner that result in the game time of the game being longer than the estimate that was given by a developer when the game first launched can be seen either positively or negatively, and that requires like a breakdown, right? And
Yeah.
if these updates are pertaining to, oh, there was an additional area added, but you're going to have like one extra area to go through without, like, let's say this ability that makes getting through the area faster. Like that's a good example of padding that was added to the
Uh,
game, but might
yeah.
be able to be seen positively depending on the nature of it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and there's other examples like, maybe requiring the player to beat the game completely before they unlock modes like Boss Rush or New Game Plus. Some people want to play games just to literally fight the bosses, right? but they
Yeah.
see like all this extra work that they have to go through and doing the sections as like unnecessary. Whereas I've seen some games before that just give you access to all the modes automatically, and you just choose
Yeah.
which one you want to do on the spot,
Mhm.
right? So, and actually, it's a good example of this. Afterimage lets you do the boss rush mode after having beaten the first major boss in the game, which is like the first 2 hours basically. And you can do boss rush right after that. You don't have to beat the whole game. If you want to beat the whole game in the first place and get all the endings, it would take a long time. So they just offer you the boss rush mode pretty much right away. And they recommend that, hey, we recommend beating the game first on advanced difficulty before trying the boss rush mode, but we're going to give it to you right away if you want to try it, right? And someone that's just there for the boss rush mode might see it as like a positive thing that the boss rush mode is available like that, because they won't have to go through the padding of the normal game where maybe they don't like the exploration or whatever. Because I've seen a lot of people say like the exploration is going through empty space a lot, right? Things like that. And then similarly, if someone wanted to fight the boss in Sekiro, they'd be like, oh, but I have to go through the main game. I just want to fight the bosses. That's an unfortunate aspect for them because they see that having to go through the main game is padding for them. Whereas someone else that likes the main game a lot might see it as like a more positive aspect, like, wow, I get to play the game Sekiro. Like, this is awesome, you know? And there's other examples of that. I think many games have done it similarly or differently, like with New Game Plus or with adding more characters. Wuchang, I think, is actually a bad example of this. And I'm just going to talk quickly about this right now because I've portrayed the other side, I think, sufficiently enough. I know some of you in the comments in the previous podcast episodes have mentioned we don't address the other side frequently enough. So I hope this has done so to your satisfaction. Wuchang does the padding in a very poor way, in my opinion. The way they add replay value to that game is by having the quest system to be like the most awful, terrible gamified quest system that I've seen. And yes, even though it's supposed to be like, oh, immersive, like you don't know exactly where the characters are going to be when they're supposed to be there. At the end of the day, they're still gamifying it because they have these icons for the characters in the fast travel menu. They have these different dialogue prompts for things that you want to select. It's not like you can pick whatever you want to say to them. So at the end of the day, we should discard the idea that these bad quest line features are there just for immersion, because they still clearly understood that some of the aspects of the quest features need to be gamified to make it a smooth enough experience. But that's besides the point. Quests in that game are so silly because oftentimes, even if you pick the quote unquote right option for what you want to do after, experimenting, doing the trial and error of multiple playthroughs and such, maybe consulting your friends or consulting a guide and stuff, something literally off screen with like another NPC can happen because maybe you triggered their quest lines out of order or whatever, or maybe you visited an area out of sequence that causes the quest line that you're trying to do properly to completely break, which means that you're going to be locked into a certain ending without you even knowing it, without even being indicated by any of the NPC's dialogue, up to the very point where it's already too late by the time you've realized that, oh man, I'm very deep in the bad ending path now. And it's funny because they still, at the point in the game where the critical choice is made, they still pretend that your choice matters, that it'll affect what ending you get, when in reality the ending's already been determined from long ago when an NPC's quest line was broken off screen basically, and there's no way to fix it because not only is the game autosave, but also the quest lines are not like trackable in a traditional way. So you have to do a whole nother playthrough to be able to quote unquote fix the things and try to see what works properly. Or you have to, if you're on PC, you have to load a backup save and such. And those sort of things, for a person that previously was a working person, right, and was seeing all of these like horrible features being implemented around the quest in that game, I was like, man, this game just really wants to add quote unquote replay value in these quests, but the reality is that they're just implemented so poorly that I don't really care. Like, I'm just gonna look up a guide, like, so that I can waste as little time as possible with these quests. And by the time that I ended up getting the majority of the endings I wanted to do, not only did I know way more about how the quests work in that game than I cared to really know, but I also just realized that that is like the least fun part of the game to begin with. Like, the most fun part about that game is the combat. The quests are just a distraction that really shouldn't even be there. And it seems like they just borrowed over something from Dark Souls without really thinking about how to integrate it properly or how to improve upon it for that matter. think if you're going to try to copy or be inspired by something, you should really seek to improve upon it as much as possible, because there's not really a point in being the one that can see after the fact all the mistakes that were made, and yet not even taking the opportunity to try to improve upon it, right? So that's an example in my mind of where padding can go wrong. And I'm sure the developers weren't even thinking that, oh, we're putting padding in this game, because they just literally took exactly how Dark Souls implemented it and put it in their game. Yet it's somehow worse because Sekiro had already improved upon what Dark Souls was doing with its quest, and yet still they copied over from Dark Souls instead of Sekiro. Like, it's just baffling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of time wasting and not looking at your other games in your space and trying to build upon it, might as well talk about Baldur's Gate 3. Oh,
Yeah.
buddy. I think Baldur's Gate 3 was the game where I realized that, like, my perspective on games as someone who's like much busier than I think a lot of people who would play that kind of game, um, realized that my perspective would just be very different, right? Because just to give background to the audience real quick, I don't like that game. I think that game is, um, in many ways, like, I think there's a lot of things that Larian missed the mark on that they really shouldn't have. That I'm just baffled that they did. So, part one, I guess, is like inventory management. So the way inventory management in this game is handled is you have a party of four people, or four characters, and each character has their own inventory, and your ability and the way you can like navigate the inventory within each member's, or an inventory, is like you can sort the inventory or you can search. Now, what's the problem with that? First of all, you would have to, if you want to like make sure that each character immediately picks up the loot that they need, you would need to switch uh, between characters when you're looting after a battle. Make sure like, oh, let's make sure that Lae'zel gets all the martial weapons, and then let's make sure that Gale gets uh, all the spell scrolls, right? And stuff like that. You'd have to switch manually between each character to make sure that they have an inventory that's actually useful for them. Because in other CRPGs of that genre, let's take, I don't know, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, for a game that's similar in that genre, um, because they both descend from different versions of D&D, and Pathfinder was also released 2 years before Baldur's Gate 3, so I would assume that um, Larian would look at what Owlcat was doing there, or at least they could use that as a point of comparison. With Pathfinder, they first of all they use a shared inventory, right? And for there are many reasons why this is way better, and it's because like you can just have anyone loot, and you don't have to deal with like, oh, let's transfer all these things around to different characters. Like, oh, my sorcerer has 5 swords, let's transfer them all to Lae'zel. Um, and uh, it's just like one of those things where I'm like, why would you do that? But I think that, to your point, Karushi, Larian and a lot of people think that like the the inventory per character thing is very intrinsic to like D&D or um, Baldur's Gate 3. It's like they're just like, oh, obviously you have to have one inventory per, right? Instead of doing the shared thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like similar how you were talking about the map thing. I think Larian considered like, oh, the inventory things are non-negotiable, even if like people would complain about it. Like, no, it's we gotta make it feel like D&D or whatever. Then the other thing too is like, notice when I was describing the inventory earlier, what you can do in an inventory, I didn't mention filtering. You can't filter. You can't filter by armor, by consumables, by quest items, or whatever, right? And like Pathfinder lets you do this. Owlcat's next game, what was it? what was it? 40K Rogue Trader lets you do it, right? And that one, I'm not sure if Larian thinks that the ability to filter is like would intrinsically break their vision of what Baldur's Gate 3 should be. I'm not sure if that's the case. I think they just didn't implement it. But it's just, these inventory things, I really those were some things that really like pissed me off with the game. I was just like, come on, why do I have to do this? But a lot of people don't care. A lot of people are like, whatever. And I think part of it's because um I every time I run into these things, I feel like I could be doing something else. I feel like I could be doing something better with my time than wrestling with these things. But people who like might have gaming as a higher priority thing in their life, or don't like deep down inside feel like the game needs to prove that it's worth my time. People, um, so for me, the Baldur's Gate 3 had to prove that it was worth my time. It didn't. For people that, maybe that's not how they feel, like it's probably not a big deal. But for me, it was. So just wanted to, yeah, that was actually one of the games that like put me onto this topic in a sense.
There's something I wanted to revisit, mentioned earlier by both you and Retrorage. So the whole idea that like gamers nowadays talk about, I want the bang for my buck, right? Like I want to get as much value or like content or game time for each dollar spent on the game. So then, if it's like, friend slot being $5 and it's like, wow, I got 100 hours with good times with friends, like that was a good deal or whatever, right? Or if it's like Silksong, $15, where it's like, wow, Silksong only $15, I got 70 hours of playtime from it, like that's awesome. Like, trust me, we're not making up these sentiments. Like these are sentiments I've seen time and time again, not just on Reddit, not just on Twitter or whatever, but just in general. It's pervasive across the gaming space.
I mean, I can talk to friends and they'll say that,
Yeah, no, for real, yeah. And something that's mentioned about Dark Souls as well, like is like, wow, like what a lovely 60-hour experience that was. And don't realize that the reason it's 60 hours is because of the Miyazaki trademark trial and error, right? Like the runbacks and stuff from the earlier games. I'm not talking about Elden Ring because that's a different story. But the Dark Souls or the Bloodborne or whatever. Now, one thing I want to mention is that there's another perspective to be considered here. How about competitive multiplayer games? These games, like, okay, obviously a lot of them are free to play, but there are plenty of competitive multiplayer games that are also pay to play. Overwatch when it first came out was $60, is that right? Or 70?
It was 60.
60.
70 wasn't standard until 2023, I believe.
So $60. Okay. There was there's a lot of fighting games that are still $60 to this day.
But that game's not competitive anymore, LOL.
Yeah. And there's still some anime games releasing from various companies that are within the $40 to $60 range. Now, mind you, that's still a lot of money, but the perspective that players have that are avid of these genres are that, look, I get like infinite playtime basically because it's a competitive game where I can always hop on, play against someone online. There's always something to explore. There's a high ceiling. I can always look to improve at a setup or at my skills or at applying matchup knowledge. There's always something to get better at, and I can get so much content out of it. That's the perspective that people express. Now, how does what we've been talking about so far pertain to that? A lot of the time when I've come home from work, or logged off of work rather, how do I decide? How do I decide
this
when
dude works remote? That's crazy.
worked remote?
Yeah, bro, worked remote. That's crazy.
A lot of the time I'm thinking, how do I spend my evening just to relax and cool off, right? After a long day of work or after a rigorous day of work, I want to relax and cool off with something that is soothing, hopefully not very stressful. Some people look to relieve themselves in different ways, but that's just the perspective I had. And the number one thing I was thinking of for a long time was I want to make good use of this evening because there's less time in the evening for me to be to myself than there is during the workday, right? Now, naturally, a lot of the time spent to yourself is sleeping, so we're not counting that, right? Sleeping you have to do regardless. But just aside from sleeping, aside from working, you have limited time to yourself. And I want to make the most out of it, right? So I want to play a game that lets me just like relax, ease my mind, enjoy myself before the next day of work, right? So the number one games I would gravitate to are like just chill games, baby games, basically. So you think something like maybe Rune Factory or something like Kirby, or something like replaying Igarashi Castlevania game. I know that might not sound chill, but when you're replaying those games, you already know what's going on. It's fine, right? The thing is, a lot of like if I were to try to think of a new Metroidvania I wanted to pick up, and I'm like browsing Steam, a lot of the ones I see are like inspired by Hollow Knight, right? And Hollow Knight, I'm not talking about its difficulty at all. I don't want to get into that. It doesn't matter for the purposes of the conversation. But Hollow Knight's a game that has a lot of, let's say, slow pacing or dead time. Yeah, no, exactly. And that's something that I might not gravitate towards, right? If I know it sounds weird that like I'm trying to relax and a slow paced game is not something I'll gravitate towards, like Hollow Knight. But the thing with Hollow Knight, it's not that just that it's slow pace. It's slow pace and it applies a lot of like intentional stress to you. Let's put it that way. And the stress of not having the map and exploring blinded through rooms. And when I say Hollow Knight here, I mean Silksong, because Silksong is the recent one that I played. Hollow Knight doesn't really apply as much for this example. So I'll say Silksong from here on. Silksong, has a lot of built-in stress mechanics. Enemies do high damage to you, for example. The enemy AIs in general are very annoying. A lot of the times, the distance between each bench save point is very far. You have to explore blindly in some areas because of the lack of a map for it. You have to pay for your save points. You have to pay for the fast travel, blah, 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 right? All these culminate into like a not as relaxing experience, even though the game itself is not really that like involved per se. Like, there's not like a lot of execution where I'm like, exercising my brain or my hands or something like that, right? Like it's just more so the emotions that are evoked from playing that game that I would not prefer to gravitate towards. Whereas something like, Kirby, right? Like I'm just, goofing around, I'm moving, I'm action hack and slashing through the levels or whatever. And I know it might sound like, I just want an easy baby game, but genuinely I would rather gravitate towards something that doesn't evoke stressful feelings when I already have to deal with stress when I'm working or when I have a deadline to meet or things like that, right? Like I'm not trying to double those emotions. Whereas someone with like with more time for leisurely activities, maybe the stress might come from other external factors, but they might have more time to themselves for leisurely activities. They might not see it as, I have to make the most of this, limited time I have. They might see it as I have this time so often that it doesn't really matter what I do with it. Let's try out this new game or whatever, And that certainly does affect one's perspective. Like I think people kind of overlook that sometimes, but someone that doesn't have like a lot of ways in which they can spend their limited time to play a game might not see these things as much of a problem or might not be as bothered by them in general. And the mechanics I mentioned I've had constant problems with are obviously informed, like my perspective on them is informed by the fact that, yeah, my free time is limited, but also by the fact that I just don't really see these mechanics as beneficial. Like there's genuinely good aspects to some of these games that I feel like are brought down by some of these mechanics that get in the way of, tapping into that exact fun that I get out of it personally. And, another example I have as well, Valkyrie Profile 1, as much as I love that game's unskippable cutscenes, I'm not defending that. Like it's just silly. Even when you play the game over again, like when you do replays, you can't skip the cutscenes at all. Like you've already seen all of them. It's not like you're seeing anything new. It's not like the cutscenes change on a new playthrough. They're the exact same as they were the first time. They're unskippable and they're very long. And then you start to realize that when you play the game in like an any percent fashion where you're not doing exactly all the content that's in the game each playthrough, there's actually not that much pure gameplay compared to the amount of time spent in the cutscenes. And I say pure gameplay as in like the battles, not like the dungeons and stuff. The dungeons are a different story. But that game does allow you to skip a lot of battles because the only battles you really have to do are the trap rooms and the boss fights, because you can technically skip all the battles in a dungeon, since the game doesn't have random encounters, which big thumbs up for that. Like that game not having random encounters is very unusual for that time period. That was still in the 90s. A lot of JRPGs had random encounters still in the PS1 era. And for that matter, random encounters in general, I feel like are another element of padding that we've been talking about, where yes, they can seem like something where it's like you gotta, fight to maintain your resources, like that's a gameplay element, where they can seem like an intrinsic component of the world. But the reality is that look at the strategies players do when there are random encounters in the game. Don't you start to notice that a lot of players want to escape after a while? They just want to escape as quickly as possible. And yet these games incorporate some random elements to the escape mechanic itself to make it so that your escape is not guaranteed, which means you're stuck in some of these random encounters for much longer than you want to be. And that time spent in random encounters adds up quite a bit. I mean, the devs know that it's a problem themselves, so they put in these consumables to make it feel less bad. That's a band-aid solution, but anyway, I've gone on and on. Some of your favorite games from your childhood have this mechanic too. Pokemon.
Pokemon.
Wait, did you guys hear that? Pokemon? Someone said Pokemon?
Yeah.
Oh.
Someone say Pokemon.
Okay.
Mm,
Interesting.
yeah. It's funny how when fans will make Pokemon games, they will often put in anti-random encounter mechanics because they know,
Yep.
like, not anti-random encounter mechanics. You need random encounters, but like ways to control it, basically.
Yeah.
They know.
They already exist in the Pokemon game.
Yeah, they do. In like Gens 8 and 9, but like for Gen 7 and before, it's like a
No,
bit
they
less
still
prevalent.
exist. Repel has existed since
Oh no, that's what I've been talking
I think
about. The
the
consumables. Yeah.
first game.
Yeah, but it's like
Yeah.
consumables, right?
Yeah, but
When
they're
I'm thinking,
super cheap. It's that same thing with the after image teleport potions. You just buy them.
Yep.
yeah. I mean, it's
No
not
big
like a
deal.
huge resource drain. Repels are still probably good enough, but
Yep.
but like, and developers will take it a step further. I'm saying they'll use like a key item. Like,
Pokemon, okay, I think I've played the most Pokemon out of everyone here.
probably. Yeah.
Okay, am
Mhm.
I right when I say that?
Probably.
Okay.
What gens have you played?
I played all of them except for the last two and Gen 4, 5.
4 and 5? You didn't play
4.
Gens 4 and 5?
Well,
Oh,
no, sorry, 5 and 6. Or
so
like,
you didn't play 5 and
what?
6?
I didn't play Black, White, or Black and White 2.
Okay.
And
You
then
played
the X and
1 through
Y.
4 and then 7, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
7 and 8.
Oh, you played 7 and 8?
Yeah, I haven't played 9 or 10. But anyways,
There's no Gen 10. I don't think Gen 10's a thing yet.
isn't that Scarlet Violet? No, the other one after that, Arceus, Pokemon Arceus or
Is
whatever.
that Gen 10? Really? I thought that was still Gen 9. Anyway.
Nah, it's more like a side game.
Yeah, that's a
Okay,
side game.
side game.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think Pokemon's main issue is not the random encounters. Yes, like I suppose you could say they waste time in the speed running aspect, but like on a casual playthrough, for the most part, they're not that big of a deal. And I feel like most JRPGs don't really overstep it that hard, right?
Anymore.
Yeah, anymore. Correct.
Anymore, yeah,
Anymore.
Yeah.
anymore. I haven't played any of the old ones, but
Yeah.
for the more recent ones, it's not that bad. It takes some amount of time, but it's not that bad.
Oh my
Like
goodness.
I
Yeah.
can sit here and be like, still be a working person, and go out and play a JRPG because that it's part of my expectation, right? That oh yeah, there's some random encounters, and then
Yeah.
you get some items, you get some more experience. You can use them as fodder to like test your moves out or whatever, right?
I
But,
mean,
like
Repel was available back in Gen 1 already, so like
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
people, it's not like
It's
a
not the
thing.
yeah,
Pokemon doesn't
Pokemon
really do
specifically,
that,
it's not the big
that bad, right?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
I would
biggest
not
deal in the
say
world.
that Pokemon is a good example to represent time wasting in a
Yeah.
JRPG.
No, it's I just meme on it because I'm like, damn, even with repels and
Pokemon
like
waste time
I
because the games are bad.
No,
yeah.
I brought up Pokemon because that's an example I feel like people forget that has random encounters. So that's why I made sure to point that out.
Yeah, it has random encounters, but it's not so bad where it's like a mental thing where I'm like, dang, I really hate these random
Yeah,
encounters.
because like I think the example I actually think of is like old school Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
Like I don't personally like personally I haven't played that game, but when they re-released it recently, they gave an ability to like skip random encounters or like turn off random encounters, and I think that's an admittance that like in this day and age, like it's probably not super necessary and people don't want to deal with it. I
So
think that's
yeah, yeah.
sorry, yeah. Okay,
Like
Drive, you go.
it definitely depends on the nature of the game. Like, is the game's focus on surviving to the next Pokemon Center or whatever or equivalent, or is the game's focus on strengthening your characters and stuff, or is the focus on just exploring the world? And depending on that, the inclusion of random encounters can be complementary towards it or detracting from it. Um,
But
yeah. What's up? Yeah.
yeah. So like for example, if you go through Pokemon, the first time you play it, you'll never notice random encounters, right? Being too much of a big deal. Like when I started noticing it was when after I was doing multiple playthroughs, right? And I'm just trying to get somewhere fast and I'm stopped by a random encounter. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time I walk through a patch of grass, I'm just trying to get to Celadon City. Right? I've already played
Mm-hmm.
this game. I'm just trying to get to Celadon City, right? And then I'm running through the grass and I'm like praying. I'm praying that my step counter is enough so that I could just get past the patch of grass without going through a random encounter, right?
Yep.
But like at that point, I'm
My favorite's the
replaying the
cave.
game again, right? So the game theoretically has already gotten the maximum time. It's gotten the time out of me, right? And I want to
Mm-hmm.
bring this up. It's like I feel like developers shouldn't worry about how much time their game has because the player will give the time to the game, right? For example, like if I really like the game, it doesn't matter if the game's 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, right? 4 hour, 5 hour, 6 hour. I can replay it. I can replay it with different restrictions. I can start speed running the game if I wanted to, right?
Yeah.
I can
Exactly.
replay it with different restrictions. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
like there's all those Pokemon challenges where it's Nuzlocke Pokemon, or beat Pokemon with your Pokemon using no items, right? Or beat Pokemon without going to a Pokemon Center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like players will invent the game out of the game to provide more time. In my opinion, I feel like devs should really get out of the space of saying, "Oh, I need my game to last whatever 30 hours or something." Right? Just make a good game. If your game is good, the time will be there for the player to spend time in the game, in my opinion, right?
Yep.
And I feel like that's how I really thought about it, you know, whether I was working or not working, right? I feel like me being a working person enhances the feelings I already had when I was not working, right? Even when I was not working, when I sat down there and played League of Legends, right, with my homies, I was like, man, I could be doing something more with my time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's just when
Yeah,
the
but you chose
time
to play League
becomes
of Legends.
finite. I chose to play League of Legends, unfortunately. But like when the time is finite, when you have less time because you have to work, it just enhances that feeling more, right? It's not like you didn't. In my opinion, is I feel like it's not that you don't have those feelings. It's that those feelings become more focused when you have less time, right? You're like, dang,
Sure.
I only have 3 hours instead of the 9 hours. Do I really want you? That question appears in your head. Do I really want to spend it playing Dark Souls 3 after work? You know?
Yeah. Shout out to K Drive. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you really hit on a great point, and it's like um working or having limited time or being a busy person doesn't fundamentally change how you feel about the game. It just lowers your tolerance for certain things and enhances the potential feeling of like, am I really using my time wisely here? Great point. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to fundamentally change like how you view a game, but it will change how much you tolerate things and things.
Yeah. There's something I want to bring up too. I was watching Storm Claymore's playing of Mega Man Battle Network. That's a game that had random encounters at one point and got rid of them after a certain iteration. And those of you that are more familiar with that series can probably pinpoint exactly when they decided to do away with that. But I'm sure the gameplay of that game is very cool. But when you're like honed in on the next location that you need to travel to, the random encounters do serve as, you know, a proper like obstacle along the traversal, let's say, because otherwise you'd just be walking in the empty space of the overworld map or whatever. But at the same time, when they occur in that frequency, because when I was watching him play, it seemed like they occur very, very frequently.
Two-step
Yeah. Yeah.
random encounter.
Yeah, that one is where it's like, okay, you know, it's breaking the flow a little bit. Yeah, it's breaking the flow a little bit. Like, forget about, you know, do you have a lot of free time or not? It just gets in the way a little bit. You do have to strike the right balance if you're going to incorporate something like that. And moreover, yeah, I mentioned Pokemon stirring the pot a little bit, but the real examples here are definitely old school Final Fantasy VII and some of the old school JRPGs as well. I believe Final Fantasy games earlier on in that series had random encounters alongside that. At the time, Trios was making Star Ocean. They actually were trying not to include random encounters. There was another game I played or tried recently from Software. Can't remember the name of the game. Walk was the one that told me about it. It's like an RPG where you play cards from a deck and like they cast like spells and abilities to defeat the monster in the encounter. The first game in that series has random encounters. The second game does not. I can't remember the name of the game right now,
You got
unfortunately.
Naughty Tensei?
No, it's from Software. From Software.
From Software.
Yeah. Why do you know the game?
Kingsfield or
No.
something.
Searching it up.
Yeah, if you can find that
Shadow
name
Tower.
No.
Echo Knight.
Echo Knight. No.
Evergrace.
No. But yeah.
Okay, I give up.
But yeah, that game has random encounters in the first game. The second game does not. And I think the first game really suffered from having random encounters because they happen super frequently in that one. Waka said he was not bothered by it. The sense I get is that Waka's not really bothered by anything, pretty much. So it has to be really extreme of nature for him to take trouble with it. And I think that is another dimension to the perspectives that can be had on something like this, because again, a lot of people, when they're, you know, trying to play a game, they naturally know that it's supposed to be fun. So they're probably trying to look for all the fun they can get out of it as much as possible. And certainly there's a degree of like, you know, interest that factors into that. Like, how much interest are you bringing to the game preemptively? Whereas how much interest are you looking for the game to bring out of you, like itself, like as a, you know, make this game seem worth it to me, as Moxie has illustrated, right? That's those are definitely factors as well.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to ask
Mhm.
you a question really quick.
Mhm.
Do you think that when you're busy, like you feel like the intrinsic interest you bring is lessened, and the interest you're looking the game to like bring out of you, you're expecting more out of it? Do you ever like feel like you're expecting more extrinsic interest to be enticed out when you're like a busy person?
So I'll say it this way, right? Like, there's a lot of interest I have, like not just in games, but various other things, right? Like, I like watching esports, I like going on walks, I like playing card games, you know, and all these things compete
Like playing
for
kusoge, such as Yu-Gi-Oh.
yes, yeah, that's the kusoge fighting game and card game form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all these things I like doing, and I have to decide between them on any given occasion. So if I can see when I'm like deciding, okay, this time I'm going to play a new Metrovania, and I see like right off the bat the new Metrovania is just doing some nonsense with like the mechanics it's including, like, you know, like long run backs or no map or bad quality of life features, I'm not going to waste my time further. I'm just like, okay, you know, I'm not going to be like, oh, so when does this game get good, right? Unless I really, really, really have like the curiosity or wanting to have an opinion on it. Like, there's some games where I just want to have an opinion on it, so maybe the motivations there are not well founded.
Did you
But
agree?
yeah, Yeah, in your case, yes. Um,
Yep.
yeah, there's some games where it's like, okay, I want to have an opinion on it, so I'm going to see it through to the end, but I'm not actually playing it with interest or enjoyment. Whereas there's other games where I'm like, yo, Igarashi's got a new Metrovania, like I'm hype, you know? Like I've already got the
Yeah.
interest, and pretty
Mm,
much I'm just like, smiling from ear to ear, like while playing it. And maybe by
yeah.
the time I get to the end of it, I'm like, okay, this was kind of whatever, but at least it's a new Igarashi game. Whereas if it's a game I'm not like super interested in already, then I'm like not over the fence by the time I'm playing it. So it really has to do more to impress me. And
I guess so. So it's like if it's not like something you're super duper hyped for. Like for me, I'd be very hyped for a new 3D Zelda, right?
mm-hmm.
So like that hype might carry me through. But like if it's already something that maybe I'm not like super into, then the feeling of like I could be doing something else can
Yeah,
feed into like a lack of interest
yeah,
and
and
then feed into nah, I'm not gonna do that.
yeah, no, exactly. I mean that's been the case for me, especially the past couple years, because before like 2023, I wasn't really playing that many non-fighting games, right? So it was already a strenuous effort for me to be willing to try out something that was out of my comfort zone. Like in college, I had tried out Tales of Berseria. It's not like I didn't like that game, but I just didn't, stick it out. I wasn't particularly like, oh, I need to have an opinion on this, or oh, I want to see it through to the end or anything like that. I was just playing it, and I had fun with the little time I played it so far. But it didn't like keep my interest so much because maybe the interest wasn't already there, like purely, and it was only like a very shallow surface level interest that uh fizzled out over time. And the same can be said for games I've even put more time into. Like maybe League of Legends. I wasn't really interested in League of Legends when I first tried it, but friends were playing it, so I was like, sure, I'll hop on. And maybe by the time I was playing it, since I wasn't really necessarily approaching it with like, oh, I'm gonna love this game, and I ended up liking it a little bit, then I was like, oh yeah, no, this is cool, right? And I played a little bit more, blah blah blah. Eventually, I'm like, wow, this game is trash, so I stopped playing it. And the perspective I have on the things from when I played it is very different from when um or after the fact rather. The perspective on things after the fact from when I had played it are different from when I was in the midst of playing it. So with that in mind, I do think the interest level when you're entering the game does factor in. And I do have one exception to all the things I've said, which is Nine Souls. Nine Souls was a game I was like predispositioned to be like hating over basically because I was seeing like all these raving reviews about it and stuff like, oh, like this is the next good Metrovania after Hollow Knight and stuff like that, right? And I was like, I'm tired of seeing all these pretend Metrovanias. And I looked further into it and realizing that the developers never really put any Metrovania marketing in their game, and it's really just the community's association with it being a Metrovania that put it in that space. If you look closely, the developers only mention it as action platformer, and there's a clear Sekiro inspiration, of course. But anyway, that's beside the point. So I tried it. I ended up actually liking it, and from having liked it in that pure, position where I wasn't predispositioned to like have interest in it or anything, nor was I like, oh, I'm gonna play it to the end to have an opinion, but otherwise I don't really care. That interest kind of built naturally from playing it, and then over time I'm like, wow, I kind of like this game, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I think for that to happen, the game really does just have to be good. Like I don't think that really, for me personally, I don't think that really happens if I don't end up thinking the game was good, basically. You know?
Yeah, it's like me with Hades.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not saying like oh I was I wasn't predispositioned to hate Hades. I was like this probably is probably gonna be all right, but like because the controls are so tight and because it feels so good to play and I just find it fun. It's like oh I really like this game,
Yeah.
and I guess that's the one recent example I've had of like um interest like organically growing over time because the game like grips me or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but I guess it's like that feeling is very rare because it's very rare that I find like a game that I'm just like, oh, this game's really fun. This game's really good. And it's, and like because I think what we're getting at here with this discussion is like being a busy person can just lower your tolerance for stuff, lower your tolerance for like, and can amplify like feelings of like apathy or just like irritants at a game. You're just like, oh, come on, you be doing this right now,
Yeah.
and it's just it will never. It's not gonna like take a game that you were neutral or like slightly positive on and make you hate the game. It'll take a game that you're like, I don't know about that one, or like you were like, oh, that's probably not that great, and make you be like, oh my god, what was this?
Yeah. Yep. No,
I think
exactly.
that's what we're landing on here. It's like it will only, it's like it sets certain because I think for me, I don't know about for you, it sets certain expectations of like, okay, if this is gonna be worth my time, this thing gotta be fire, and if it's not fire, it's like, okay, come on.
Yeah.
I want to bring up I feel like if you, these are only things that exist from a single player self time perspective, right? I think once
Yeah,
you add a homie into the conversation, I think my tolerance becomes infinite, right?
and
Because you know,
that's a great point. I mean, I've made this joke a lot with you guys, but like we could sit down and play Brawl, and we could do infinite dimensional cape-offs, and it would be pretty fun, right? So, but like,
I mean,
there's
how
a
else would
reason.
I stomach 2,000 hours of League, right?
Yeah,
There's just no way, dude. I guarantee you, most of my playtime of League of Legends, like I say 89%, 85 to 95% is spent playing with people I know, right?
like duos
Versus
or full stacks, right?
yeah, solo queue is like 5% of my time, right?
Yeah, solo queue sucks.
I'm almost
And
never
on
playing
all
League of Legends by
5% of that
myself.
time, you do solo queue, and you're like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, right? And it's like there's a lot of games that, for example, I think I filter pretty strongly for what games I actually purchase and play, right? I don't think those people with infinite Steam libraries where they just buy stuff but never play it.
Hmm.
I have a couple of games on there that are like that, but for the most part, I play every single game that I purchase,
Hmm.
right? And there's the games that I haven't played are because they're on the blind race, and I'm just waiting. I'm waiting to get to launch, get the queue to launch those games in friendly competition, right? Otherwise, I feel like times where I've played games where like I typically wouldn't play or wouldn't even consider is because someone recommended it to me or like, Ross is like, check out this new simulator game. And I'm like, okay, I would have never played Open TTD if Ross didn't push it to me, right? All right, Umahara Kase, I would have never played that. No chance. Absolutely zero, dude.
It's
Like
crazy.
self? No, never would have played. This Nestroid game that I've been playing? Absolutely not. Right? I would play Ghost of Goblins, but
Ha.
I would not play Nestroid, right? Because like Ghost of Goblins is something I've played Ghost of Goblins. Have I beaten it? No, not yet, right? But I've played Ghost of Goblins before. It's like something I would choose to play versus Nestroid is something I would absolutely not choose to play. But it's okay. It's okay because infinite tolerance, right? When it has association with someone the homie, I'll tolerate anything. Right?
Dang, that's rough.
But like that's the thing, right? If I feel like if you're doing it with friends, right? The time is always valuable, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Even if you're playing like the worst game that's ever been spawned out of a developer, right? If you're playing it if you're spending time with your friend, that time will never be thought of as like, oh, I'm wasting my time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Theoretically.
because you're hanging out with your friends, and that's always good.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, but that's
Exactly.
the only substance is the hanging out with the friends. Like, so you could literally do
Yeah.
anything.
Do you want to? By the way, do you guys want to play Big Rigs? Sometime.
Wait, what is that?
Oh,
Big
the
Rigs
trucker
over the road
game?
racing.
Yeah.
The console game.
I'm down.
Yeah.
Dude, we're gonna just blind race Euro Truck Simulator or one of the country truck simulators at some
Yeah,
point.
Big Rigs is a funny game because it's here. I'll the audience won't be able to see this, but I'll put this in VC text.
Yeah.
Uh, this is the UI. This is what the game looks like.
What is this?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's peak. It's peak.
Dude, it's cinema, and it's
Big
also
rig
on
racing.
Steam.
Ah, friend slot,
Yeah,
friend slot.
and
Here,
slop.
I'll
Yeah,
Look,
so it's like
The numbers don't
that's
even fit in the UI.
yeah. And Retrorage, that's why I think we've been focusing on the single player aspect so much, or like the playing alone aspect, because like I can never critically think about like, oh, what is the game like when I'm playing with friends? It's always gonna be fun. I'm with my friends. It's always gonna be fun. You
But
know?
there are
Yeah.
cases where like people don't, think about it. For example, if someone told me out to go out clubbing, right?
Yeah.
I would not humor them. Like I do
Really?
not have infinite tolerance for things like that. There are things that I will not do, no
I
matter
guess.
who's telling me to do it, right?
I guess like for me, wait, can I reference drug paraphernalia on this platform?
Let's hold off. Let's hold off.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's
But,
just like an example,
oh,
right? So,
like for me, like I was hanging out. Um, I actually saw an old friend last night at a concert, and he invited me back to smoke. I will not smoke, right? Like I refuse.
Hmm.
I guess that's the case as well, right? But you know,
I think the other thing too is there's a lot of activities that people will still see like as the substance over the fact that you're experiencing with friends, right? Games, I
yes.
think naturally people see games as like an enjoyable activity, so there's not like any stigma like, oh, like I'm playing this really bad game, but you know, like basically, I think a lot of people would not refuse to play a really bad game with a friend because games are like seen as enjoyable. Whereas on the
Some
other
people
hand,
would refuse to play games, which is what the
yeah,
point I was getting to, right?
I guess
Like I
so.
don't want to play games, and then that's
Yeah.
like
yeah,
okay, right? But
yeah. I mean,
that's
yeah.
we're going off topic a little bit. That's my bad.
No, it's okay. Okay, so I think the idea of like, I mean, we've established now like the idea of leisure definitely, or leisure spent on video games rather, is definitely informed by interest beforehand, or the interest developing through having played the game or the act of playing the game, or maybe you're playing with friends or things like that. The other thing I want to bring up too is there are external factors that are related to like not just like competitive multiplayer, but just like streaming. There's plenty of games I've played where I've told the folks in the chat or told the folks in Drivers Colony that I would not play this game if I were not streaming, right? And that like reinforces it's like that's like self-reinforcing for the ability for me to get through the game. Like Dark Souls 3, I would not have gotten through that game if I weren't streaming. And the more I've looked back on that playthrough, I'm like, how did I even get through this? Like it's just unbelievable. But knowing that like there's plenty of I guess fun stream moments that took place out of that game and how much influence I guess playing that game had on my gaming perspective, there ended up being some kind of value in the end out of playing it. And I wasn't like, oh, this was a waste of time after playing it. Like I still thought it
Unless it was
was
Dark Souls 3.
well, this is Dark Souls 3, but you know, I thought it was worthwhile enough still, Like even though I didn't really like the game,
Yeah.
like streaming definitely boosted the ability to enjoy it more. And in general, I think there's a lot of cases like that. Like someone might not play a game at all if there's not like auxiliary benefits being brought upon out of it, you know?
Yeah, like content or a
Yeah.
hangout,
Yeah, exactly.
whatever.
So I think that's certainly a factor. And obviously there's the idea of, being able to monetize certain things. Now, one thing I want to mention too is some developers these days put in like streamer moments into their game where it's like they put in like some troll moment or knowledge check or something that like just completely bodies a blind playthrough, and it's known to be
I was gonna
something that
mention one,
yeah.
but I know you would never be okay with me like mentioning this.
Okay. Oh, okay,
I'm
okay.
gonna hold. There's one in Baldur's Gate 3 where I was just like, why would you put that in the game? You know what it is. I
Okay.
mentioned it to you before,
Yeah, yeah.
but I was just like, why would you put this in the game? And I was like, oh, it's because like, oh, it's supposed to go viral. It's supposed to like
Yeah.
incite a reaction.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and those things are definitely in mind for the developer when they're like, okay, we know people are going to be playing these games leisurely, They're not going to be playing it like at work, for example, or something like that. Like they're going to be playing it in the comfort of their own homes, most likely. So, we'll put in a little something that satiates that. And yeah, lo and behold, some things like that might be put in the game. I mean,
Yeah.
as well, there's Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of examples. Actually, I was thinking back on things we mentioned so far. The game I was thinking of from software was Lost Kingdom. Lost Kingdoms. How can I not say that? Lost Kingdoms.
Yeah.
That's like an action RPG with like a deck building system where your deck determines the spells that you can cast basically, and there's encounters where you fight the monsters using the spells. It's action real time though. It's not turn based. It's very experimental game. From Software was definitely going somewhere with that one. It's just that there's some in polish
Or
and
cooking
then
salad.
cooking salad. There's some in polish, and the random encounters kind of are too frequent. Like if they put the slider down on the random encounters, it would be a lot better. Waka thinks it's fine. I personally think it's my perspective is justified given that they didn't have them in the second game for Lost Kingdoms, but there's something to be said about that. A lot of again, there's so many things that people aren't bothered by, but just because you're not bothered by them doesn't mean that the game can't improve by its exclusion or its inclusion, depending on the nature of it. And that's the whole point, right? If it's a quality of life, it can only benefit the game. And if it hurts the game, it's probably not quality of life, and you have to reconsider the foundations of the game itself if it's supposed to hurt the game or whatever. Um, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I think this was an interesting discussion. I think generally the point we're reaching toward is like, playing games in isolation. There's a I never really considered the idea of like, oh, you play games with people or play because to be honest, I'm mostly a single player like guy.
hmm
I like play games in isolation. I like at home, play on I don't know a Switch or a Steam Deck or whatever. But the idea of like, oh, you play. The only time where I'm like, oh, I'm playing games with friends was like with fighting games or with Smash, whatever.
yeah,
Notice how I did not say that Smash is a fighting game; it's a party game.
got him.
Yeah, but that's an interesting perspective for sure. Like, you, Rishi, do you remember that like grappling Smash clone thing that you showed me when I was at your place?
Oh yeah, Umihara calls it Bazooka. Retrorage hates that game, but
Yeah,
the multiplayer he sees the
Bazooka.
potential. Yeah, Bazooka. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, multiplayer. That game is I see it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
that's probably just because I was hanging out with you at the time.
No,
That
for
game
sure.
might be bad.
the
The
single
game might
player
just
is
be
the
bad
single
though.
player is kind of yikes, but the
Yeah.
multiplayer is definitely pretty cool. I mean, in general, it's like I'm sure the studio for it just is kind of within their own context, it's like a school project kind of thing. Where just like, oh, what if we did this, and
They
they
just kind of cobbled it together and they were like, huh, let's see.
yeah yeah.
Yeah.
Did did
Anyway.
did any of you have any closing thoughts, by the way, or anything last
Yes.
things you want to get in? Yeah,
I
sure.
wanna.
Yeah.
Or is it live? Are we cutting the time?
No, no, no,
Or
no, no, no. Anything you'd like to
No,
say? Yeah,
I have more things to talk about.
go over it. Yeah.
let's go.
Oh, I think also given limited time, when a game comes out that's fundamentally broken, I actually have like no, like instantly drop the game.
Yeah.
Right, the game's broken. But like normally, if I had more time to play the game, I may tolerate it a little bit, right?
Mm,
But in the sense that I have a job and the game's not working, nah,
agreed.
instant cut. Like if there's like game breaking bugs or anything like that, nah, you're cut. You're cut. I know Mr. Driver here has a recent uh
Timberbane.
a recent experience with that.
uh,
But
Ember
like
Bay.
as game
Woo!
developers, you gotta really make sure your game works. Like that should be
Y'all gotta lock in.
number one. There are things where it's like, oh, bugs that unforeseen bugs, right? That's okay, right? Like things that are unexpected, but like just basic functioning, nah, you cannot drop the ball on that one. I'm sorry.
yeah. Actually, that's a good point. Like, if you're expecting players to be your play testers, your beta testers, paid beta, like they're paying to do the testing for you. That's some ridiculous nonsense. Like, if you're a developer, just cut
Early
that out.
access.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do early access, except you only early access the first part, and then the third act of your game is like a broken mess because you didn't
Yeah.
test it. And then the first act, and then you don't improve any of the quality of life to any acceptable degree, and then you just rewrite storylines or something. What game could do that?
Yeah. Yeah, in those cases, I absolutely have no tolerance. Like, I legitimately, in those cases, I'm just like, I could be doing something else. Like, why would I bother playtesting your game? And if you're paying me, I'll do it. Sure, fine. Like, if you respect my time, like, I'll do it.
Nah,
But,
even if you paid me, you'd have to pay me a good hourly wage. You know what I'm saying?
well, that's what I'm saying, right?
Pay me
But
like,
the fact you have to pay and then the game doesn't work, like, dude, it's
yeah.
just, yeah, unacceptable. Sorry, Retro, I stole your point.
No, that
Yeah.
that basically is my point, right?
Mhm.
Like in terms of like as I was working as a working individual, right? But now
Mhm.
I'm not working anymore. But when
Bro's
I
the
was
unemployed
working,
final
dude,
boss.
yeah, games where I would like pick it up and it doesn't work, nah, you're done, you're done, right?
Yeah.
You're done. I would have more tolerance if I didn't have a job. I'd be like, oh, maybe if it happens here and there, I'd be like, oh, okay, right? I'll just go back. I'll do it over again, right? I don't mind doing it over again because I have the time. But nah, if with a job and not like having limited time, nah, you're getting cut. You're getting cut immediately,
Mhm.
right?
How about the fighting in perspective? I think a lot of people this resonates with, where it's like, do I want to sit down and learn in training mode, like these combos, or, do I want to sit down and memorize the frame data, or do I just want to, hop online, play some games with friends or with random people and then just carry
True,
on, right?
True.
true.
Like,
We haven't talked about this.
yeah, we can talk about it quickly because I mean we've all played fighting games. That's how we found ourselves. I think for me personally, there was a time where I was like a training mode monster, right? And this wasn't necessarily related to the fact that I had a lot of free time when I was younger. It was just the fact that I just loved training mode. So I would, spend time just learning combos or learning frame data or learning setups, right? Nowadays, I don't feel the
I
same about
actually think
fighting
it's
games.
much less stressful
Yeah, no,
to like
exactly.
just in training mode and yeah.
Yeah,
But you were
exactly.
doing it for fun,
I was just doing it for
right?
fun. Yeah,
There's
yeah.
not there was no like I wouldn't say purpose necessarily, but
Hmm.
like if you're like, oh, in order for me to play the game, I have to do these things. If that's your reasoning, which is the actual like you do actually need to do those things to play the game, right?
Right.
Like then it's gonna come off as really bad, right? Because
Yeah.
you could just play a game where the game is like designed in a way where you can play and learn at the same time, which
Hmm.
fighting games are not designed that way. FYI, no, you cannot. Maybe back then in the arcades where like I don't know, people were all bad. I don't know, right? But
Learn by
These
feel.
days,
it's just
especially
cooked.
with
I
like
don't know.
Tekken, when they're like, "Oh, learn the 6 variations of this one string." It's like, oh, this one you step, this one you like, I don't know, you duck or whatever, and you're just like, oh, I have to go into training mode to do this. Otherwise, this guy is gonna like pull out this one move out of 200, 950 billion that that like I've never seen before. I'd be like, dude, what?
Yeah, Micross, how many moves? you know, um, yeah. Actually, you bring up a good point about the training mode with purpose. I was just doing training mode for fun, purely for fun. And sometimes I'll find something cool and be like, okay, let me record this for YouTube, right?
Bro does training mode for fun. Laugh at this nerd. Ha
Yeah,
ha ha ha.
yeah. I mean, that was the enjoyment I got out of fighting games for a long time, and the games that proved that they had the most depth were perfect for this. Like the Blaze Blues of the world, the old Guilty Gears, the Marvel
Uni.
threes, even the Uni, um, the KOFs. Like those games were like great for that. And I think over time, fighting games have tried to like bridge the gap between new players and veterans. So they've eliminated the portion of like growth and training mode that you can do. Although that's not actually true, because the things that you have to do in training mode now are things that a new player can body you for if you don't do it. Before it was like, okay, a new player won't be able to beat me if I put in this amount of training mode time. This is something that Daigo has famously said in interviews in SF4 days, where in SF4 you can just out training mode someone. Like you can just spend more time in training mode and be better. In SF5, you have to really be like psychologically strong, basically, to beat people, because that's a game where a lot of
Yeah,
people
because
can
V
win.
trigger.
Yeah, because V-Trick, exactly, and Crush Counter and all that stuff. Um,
That game was so
and
funny, bro.
yeah, oh my goodness.
I look back in that game and I was like, what did Capcom how did Capcom think that this game looked good?
Yeah, I mean they were. You know what? Capcom somehow made it out of that because of not
They
fighting
were cooking
games.
some raw cucumbers with that one.
Yeah, it was like, okay, how bad can we make this game and see people still buy it for the SF brand while we make some other good games that are not fighting games.
Yep.
um, You know, the other thing is nowadays, because the training, well, okay, I wanted to clarify what I meant by the fact that it's not true. Because nowadays you still need training mode time, but it's not in order to become like the lab monster, like the scientist or the PhD in knowledge in the game. It's, if anything, it's to beat the scrubs that will knowledge check you to you know the world's end with things that
Yeah.
otherwise you're gonna get blown up by because anyone can do it. You know, and that's like the Strives of the world. That's the Tekken 8s of the world. That's now become the Uni 2s of the world. Um, those things, I think people that previously thought fighting games were too much of an investment to do training mode in, those same people will still have the same sentiment. They'll think like, okay, it's too much training mode time. But at least for the people that don't care about training mode, they can have a better shot at just like having a little bit of fun button mashing or doing whatever they want to do because they can easily, win without having to put in like so much training with time. But when you start to take it seriously, when you want to like stop losing to some of the nonsense that you see in these modern fighting games, then that's where it's like, do I really want to spend this time in training mode? And it's a requirement too if you want to be able to beat these people. So what do we think about this? Like, do we think that, like, I guess the work perspective, the working man perspective, working woman perspective informs whether we want to spend the time in training mode for fighting games or not?
No,
It-
because I didn't spend
no.
time in training mode when I had a job or when I didn't have a job. Actually,
Dang.
though, that is a true statement.
Bodied.
My
I
fighting
mean, a
game
lot of pro
history.
players had a job. Like what? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I'm like, it might actually make me want to stay in training mode more because it's predictable. I can just be like, oh, just do my own thing. But I'm not someone who wants to play multiplayer games when when I just worked 16 hours trying to get something in before the weekly release cutoff. You know what I mean? I'm just someone who like doesn't want to play competitive multiplayer.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm stressed out.
You know, Fraufraw, sorry, I think we might have cut you off briefly. Did you have anything to say about this?
Oh, I said a lot of Street Fighter pro players had a job while they're while they enter competitions.
While they're
So
coming up, yeah,
yeah.
that is true.
Kakeru recently decided he wanted to go back to the workforce after winning his Capcom Cup grand prize, right? So definitely recent example. I'm sure
Is he the
players.
JP player?
Yeah, yes, he played JP.
Is JP so like whack in that game that it makes even JP players want to like fill out a job application again?
Maybe he's been toned down since the early days. I'm not sure though. I haven't kept up with
Yeah,
SF6.
people. Yeah, I just know people don't like that character. Maybe it's because they don't like zoners and they think zoners are cheating.
Yeah, to be fair, you definitely have the training mode against JP, so that's probably part of it.
Oh yeah,
And the
it
JP
is
player doesn't have to.
knowledge check, knowledge check, knowledge check, and knowledge check some more.
Yeah, and think about it, right? Like the JP player doesn't have to spend that much time proportionally in training mode to be able to do some of the baseline things. Whereas you got to be the one to spend time in training mode to know what to do against. Like that's the kind of idea I guess that was being expressed in this segment of the discussion.
Question.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a
when you feel like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm working so hard just to survive against this dude who's just mashing buttons, you're like, come on.
Yeah, yeah. There's another dimension to it too, because when I was learning, well, okay. First of all, I do want to express the sentiment that if I've done like a long stretch of just like homework or whatever, I really look forward to the days of FGC UCLA where I just like spend some time with the folks on Friday and play some fighting games. Like that was an awesome time. It's like a reward, after, like, even if I wasn't necessarily doing training mode that week, it was like, okay, I did all this homework, like, man, I need a relief, and just go down on Friday and play some games. But and similarly, if you had an arcade near you, I did have an arcade fortunately when I was younger that I could go to close enough. You know, I wasn't necessarily stressed when I was younger like that, but at the end of the day, you go there to just, hang out and play a little bit of games at the arcade, and then, you be on your way. Like that was a positive thing, I would say. But I think it's worth mentioning that those are still inherently social activities. So part of the value of doing that is removed from the act of playing the game itself. And part of the value is attached to the fact that you're hanging out with people or you're socializing or things like that. So it's still worth mentioning that, at the end of the day, a lot of the way we choose to spend our time leisurely in video games is affected by numerous factors, not just like the, in the vacuum, isolated act of playing the game, but potentially other things. It's just that fighting games have this like added component of, it's you're on your own. It's a 1v1 kind of game. There's typically a lot of training mode involved in order to be able to win, and a lot of people like winning. That's like the satisfaction of it all, right? And on top of that, you gotta have the willingness to go online. Like the sentiment I had was like, man, imagine logging off work to play a fighting game online, especially when the online was bad. Like I'm not signing up for that. Like it's just I could be doing something way better. So yeah, that's my perspective on that.
Fighting games are bad, guys. Not worth
Fighting games are
spending your time
terrible.
on.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell the audience right now, don't waste your time.
I
Any
only
video I see,
tolerate
they're
it.
like, why you should play fighting games, and I'm just like, you're coping.
Those of you that haven't watched already, the video 5 reasons you should play fighting games, go watch it.
True,
Go watch it right
true.
now.
I feel like, okay, for fighting games, there are some fundamental concepts in fighting games that every new player should watch a YouTube video of, right? Because that
Hmm.
will
They
help
should
them so
watch
much.
that Blasted Salami's Tekken 7 Devil Jin Essentials.
Oh.
Well, just something, right? They
Something like
like
that, yeah.
coming into the fighting game genre with like no knowledge, you're gonna be spending your time being like, what is going on? And then you're probably gonna drop the game, right?
Hmm.
Because it's like watching those videos and like that general knowledge is like a speedway, right? Versus if you didn't have that knowledge, you're like walking towards a destination. You're gonna spend if you were walking, it'll take you 10 hours. Versus if you're on like a motorcycle or something, it'll take you an hour. You're gonna get to point A to point B. And it's just how much time it takes you to get there, right? If you have some general knowledge that you like get from somewhere, because fighting games aren't gonna teach you that, by the way. Nah, right? That's why I'm mentioning this point, right? Because fighting games are literally trash and they don't teach you jack nothing, like legit. And even if they try to do so, it's so trash. It's just trash. The community has to do it. Legit, I I think fighting game devs should just stop making their games. And like, okay, you know what? Let me roll back because 2XKO did that, and the game was absolute dog water. But those people were too down in the trenches of fighting games. They couldn't open their minds beyond
Yeah, like,
beyond the
when Tom
fighting game
Cannon directs a
trenches, man.
game, they're like, oh, damn.
Like, yes, fighting game, like the game. I feel like here's why I think fighting games aren't worth my time. Because the developer doesn't value my time, in my opinion. They want you to go out of your way to do something to play their game. And in my opinion, that's trash. Right. And like my principles of gaming, like a game should be something that you can learn while playing, right? Effectively. Like if I go out and play a game of chess, right? You learn the basic piece, someone tells you all the pieces, you play the game, you get bodied. Like you can still visually like see what's happening in the game, in my opinion, with just that minimal amount of knowledge. Fighting games, bro, nah. You can't see nothing. You won't understand nothing. You won't understand nothing, right? Someone can generally tell you, oh yeah, this is plus minus, right? But then someone will be minus and they'll still win, right? Because they did EXDP or something, right? Be like, oh, what? There's so many like hoops to jump through to understand how a fighting game works. I genuinely think that fighting games need like a fighting game primer. Something that the player plays, or like just something, anything, literally anything. Give me something, fighting game developers, man. Give me something that like can segue the player to playing a fighting game, because nothing be doing that, right? When I come into Street Fighter 6, I'm chilling in Street Fighter 6. I'm not very good at it, but I can like still play the game kinda, because I already have all this legacy knowledge from playing other fighting games, right? That carries over. I think fighting games have the problem of expecting legacy knowledge, and that's it. I don't know, man. I don't know.
No,
Not
that's your
worth
point.
my time. I'm not gonna go off my job and be like, oh, I need to lab out this. Street Fighter 6 is not even a good example because the game's so much easier compared to older fighting games. Like the fact that I'm like even mentioning anything is insane. It's insane, right? Like, oh, dude, all the old fighting game players, oh, you baby wimp. Back in KOF 13, I was practicing Ash combos, drive cancel shenanigans. Dude, Street Fighter 6, you're a wimp, baby fighting game. Okay, screw you, dude. Like, I ain't like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yep.
Fighting
So,
games as a genre is so Jover.
so,
Okay.
so what you're saying is the ideal game is Bleach Dark Souls, right?
The ideal game for fighting games is a game that just it teaches you how to play without you having to like you should go training mode on your own, but it should not be a requirement to go to training mode, right? Which I feel like a lot of fighting games have. It's like
Yeah.
literally required for you to hit the training mode.
Yeah.
But play the game, to just play the game, right? Like, okay, you could say that, oh, if you're in bronze 5 or whatever iron, you can play the game. You can play the game, right? What quantifies playing a game at that point? If I just sit down, mash buttons, am I playing the game? Am I playing a fighting game if I sit down and mash buttons? If you think that's playing fighting games, okay, I guess I can't win the argument, right?
Unblockable.
There's nothing for me to say. Right? If you think that sitting down and mashing buttons is playing a fighting game, or like playing Yu-Gi-Oh is sitting down and playing Blue Eyes White Dragon by tributing two normal monsters, and T setting and pass is playing Yu-Gi-Oh. I have nothing to say to you, right? You get
No,
what
you
I'm
know what true
saying?
playing Yu-Gi-Oh is? Playing Yu-Gi-Oh is bringing a 60 card deck and putting just one of each Exodia and being like, all right, let's see if we can draw it this time.
Yeah. So like for people that say, oh, you could just play the game, right? There's nothing stopping you from playing the game. I don't think that's playing the game, right? In my opinion.
No, I agree.
If you sat down, went to Mario Bros, and you just played the first level, and then you died to like the pitfall, you were pressing buttons, you didn't really know how to jump, or you didn't really run. Are you really playing Mario Bros? Right?
Dude,
When I sit down and play chess and I'm just moving pieces randomly, am I really playing chess? Right? Like that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, right?
if you use summons, did you actually beat the game? Got him.
Yeah,
No, I'm not messing
right?
around. I'm messing around.
It's like where is that bar, right? And like that equates to like, okay, spending time in video game, right? That's the whole crux of this for fighting games, right? Am I willing to spend time? Do I want to spend time, right? Playing a fighting game. And
Yep.
for the most part,
Mhm.
it's because I'm playing with friends or I'm playing with somebody. That tolerance is like infinite, right? Like I don't really care. It's like for the FGC, right? Am I going there to playing fighting games might be like 10-20% of it, but it's there to like hang out with the FGC, right?
Mhm.
You know, I initially went to FGC at UCLA, be like, bro, you know, oh, playing fighting games. These people are playing fighting games. Cool, right? That's
Mhm.
like the initial hurdle. I'm like, oh, I'll play fighting games. But then I kept going because not because of the fighting games, for me at least. It wasn't because of the fighting games that I kept going, right?
Yeah.
Initially, I might have went because oh, other people play fighting games. Okay, I'll go, right? But what kept me going is the people there, right? Being able to play fighting games with the people there. So, the infinite tolerance, like spending time. It doesn't matter if I had a job or didn't have a job, right? If I
Mhm.
didn't have homework that week or I did have homework that week, it didn't stop me from going to FGC UCLA, right?
Yeah.
You guys want to kind of the idea that I'm trying to put down here, regardless of whether I have a job or not, it won't be taken into account because the game is the mechanism in which I hang out with the homies,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
I mean, it's restorative, right? Like when you're over there. So if especially if you're having like a bad time, or maybe especially if you're, you know, doing work, like you're working a job, or you have a lot of homework or whatever, that would be a great time to spend. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I think the other thing you mentioned about what was it? Oh, so I don't know if a lot of people think of playing the game in the way you described it, but it's an interesting thing you brought up. And man, I I think I had a lot of things to say about this, but I'll try to condense it since this is an abridged episode, or it's supposed to be a shorter episode at least. Um, the idea of like what constitutes playing the game. So Robbo brought this up, has brought this up before as well. Where sometimes people say that like, oh, this section in Silksong or whatever is supposed to teach you X aspect of playing Silksong, like how to platform, or like that, you should be careful where you're going or whatever like that, right? And it was like an existential question. Are these like sections where supposedly this is being taught, are these considered to be playing the game? And I'll just be direct about it. Are these runbacks considered to be playing the game, right? Because the thing that influences our perspective of whether the time was well spent is directly associated with our idea of what constitutes playing the game. So when I'm in the fighting game and I'm dealing with Izumi's whack set play in Uni 2, or I'm dealing with I don't know, Carl Clover's insane setups in Blaze Blue Central Fiction, or whatever example, yeah, or Hyde's corner pressure in Uni 2, I might not think of myself as playing the game. And especially if I went to locals, I traveled, I paid money, yada yada, and I go 0 and 2, do the nonsense like this, I'm like, man, that really didn't feel that good. And on top of that, if I'm like also not trying to make more out of the experience of having done those things, then yes, indeed, that experience where I felt like I wasn't playing the game is gonna feel even worse, and it's gonna feel even less of well spent time. Um, but I think that idea of what constitutes playing the game is very important, because a lot of people are willing to go to such lengths to say that I still played the game or something when they're doing an activity that might be seen as dull or non-engaging for other people. And for that matter, the idea of like, Mio empty space runbacks being gameplay for some people is just, at the end of the day, that is like an important perspective to consider, because I do generally feel like the people that, how we've called paid actors on the r/slash Metrovania subreddit and elsewhere, I feel like these people might have a lower standard for what constitutes playing the game, which is why they're probably not as bothered by very dull moments within these games, especially if they feel like, the vibes or the art style are top notch or whatever, things that might not be intrinsic to the gameplay per se. um they might still feel like it was a good experience overall. And maybe these things are important dimensions to factor when we think of like, whether it was time well spent for one person versus another person. Like if you think of from my perspective, I'm like a gameplay oriented person, right? So if the gameplay is good, then I feel like it was time well spent, and I'm not really as concerned with things I consider superficial, like the visuals or whatnot. Maybe the visuals are the first thing that attract me, but then what gets me to take further interest in, um yeah, what gets me to have further interest in the game is the gameplay at the end of the day. That's what grasps me. And I think that's an important thing to try to understand or take away from this conversation as well.
You know what? Now that you mention it, I think that the okay, you're absolutely right. I know you like, oh, narrative, blah blah blah. That's not as important to you, but you're actually right in that game. It's called a game for a reason, right?
Hmm.
people. I feel like I feel like nowadays there might be a new performative archetype. It's a performative gamer, bro. Right? We're like, oh, visuals, art, blah blah blah. Oh, gaming is an art form, right? If I can feel like it gives me like that art atmosphere vibe, oh, that constitutes making it a great game. No, absolutely not. Right? In my opinion,
Yeah.
I feel like maybe it might be elitist or whatever, but if you're making a game, the gameplay is the core foundation of what constitutes a game. You
Hmm.
can have the best art in the world, the best narrative in the world, the best everything, whatever, but it will still be a trash game if the gameplay is not there. Right? It won't be. I wouldn't even call it a game at that point. Mio, is Mio a game? Okay, it's a bad game in my opinion, but does it have good interesting narrative and good visuals? Yes, but is it a good game? No, no. And I feel like people should stop conflating having good visuals or a good narrative constituting a good game, right? Because the core is the gameplay. I do
Yeah.
not consider walking simulators video games. Let me preface this, right? Because that's very important. Those walking simulator things where you just walk and it tells a story, or may even visual novels. I don't even. In my opinion, visual novels might not even be a game. Again, I in my bubble of what defines a video game, right?
Hmm.
People are like, okay, as long as there's a player interaction or like the player does something, it's a video game. Nah, nah. For me, that's not it. You can have a walking simulator. Oh, I press W. As the player, I press W, right? And that's all I'm doing for the whole game. Is that a video game, guys? Like I don't know. Right? Is that a video game? Genuinely. Genuinely, is that a video game, right? So I'm not willing to spend my time playing a non-game that sells itself as a game. I won't play Mio. I won't play visual novels. I won't play walking simulators. These are things that I will not play because I'm here to play a video game. I'm not here to experience quote unquote art, right? I play
Yeah.
games because I like the game part. I do love narratives. Like if you have good visuals, good narratives, that makes it even better, right? But the game has to be there. If I wanted to go read a book or something, then maybe I'll pick up a visual novel. Or like if I want to experience art, right? It's like walking into a museum. Those walking simulators are like me going to a museum. But I would normally not go to a museum. I would not do such a thing, right? I wouldn't go to a museum. I wouldn't purchase a walking simulator. I don't know. There's my side tangent rant. But
Yeah.
like I'm not willing to spend my time on a non-game that sells
Big
itself
game.
as a game. Like, literally, fake games, for
Yeah.
real.
Great point. Yeah, actually that is very important to understand our like someone's perspective on how they spend leisurely time on video games, right? If they're looking for something out of playing a game, specifically playing a game, in this case gameplay, and they don't find the gameplay or they find it very sparsely, then perhaps there's going to be a great disappointment, right? That's going to negatively affect the ability to take enjoyment out of the leisurely time spent on it. So, yeah, true. Uh okay, Fraufraw, before I mention Zenryoku's points, did you have anything?
No, not really.
Okay. All right, just making sure. So, before we close off this episode, and Mox, I can return to you as well if you have any last thoughts. Um, Zenryoku wrote a quick little bit of notes for this episode. He unfortunately couldn't be with us for this episode today. But here's what he wrote. He wrote a quick matrix on different types of games and like try to categorize them into optimization and management type of games, active and dynamic type of games. Let me screen share for you guys. Um, Relaxing and immersive kinds of games, and memorization and execution kinds of games. Why are these relevant, right? Because we did touch on similar things in the difficulty episode, part 2 and part 1. But why are these relevant? Well, the categorizations for these kinds of games, I think, are important for realizing what sorts of games we inherently have more interest in and are more willing to spend leisurely time on, right? So games that are grouped together similarly might have a higher chance of having overlap in the things that we prefer to spend time on leisurely, right? For example, I know that Zenryoku at least used to like a lot fighting games, and I know that he still likes shmups and Tetris, right, and beat 'em ups, and a lot of these other things potentially as well. But there's overlap in terms of the types of things he likes. Whereas it's contrasted with something like tactical games or city builders, which are a lot more involving and require more investment, maybe more attention while you're playing them. So you can't really use them as a chill game, but you can still potentially play them. Well, I say you can't really use it as a chill game. That's not true. It really depends on the person. But I still feel like these groupings are somewhat adequate demarcations for, the different types of people that
And
would.
transitioning, sorry,
Yeah, you're good. Yeah. What's up? Mhm.
I'm noticing that transitioning between one quadrant to another, like transitioning between distances is really what like requires the effort, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not like it's not like people can't play each of these games as a form of relaxation, but going from one quadrant to another or covering a lot of distance in this graph um, can require a lot of effort and can turn people off and make people be like, okay, come on, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And for that matter, like the Expedition 33 example is one that was weighing on my mind quite heavily recently because I was watching some videos on that game on YouTube, and that game is unapologetically parry slop, right? Whether you feel like the pairing in that game itself is quote unquote slop or not is a different story. But point being, lots of parrying going on in that game, and inherently parrying is going to overshadow a lot of the mechanics the developers spent time on to include in the game. But naturally, if you're a person that likes parries, then maybe no matter how many other things the game incorporates, or maybe no matter how you feel about the other things that the game does well or poorly, then you might still enjoy the game overall because you like parries. And the game highlights parries to such an extremity that that's going to allow for you to enjoy the leisurely time you spend in it, no matter what. And such games do exist. Plenty of games people say are the quote unquote perfect game, but what they really mean maybe is that it's the exact game that was like the fit for what they would look for out of leisurely time to spend in a game. I don't personally really have a perfect game, so I can't like point to a specific example, but I'm sure people have their equivalents for whatever they work from or whatever they gravitate towards. Like I know for me at least, the kinds of games I like, I'm willing to play multiple times, right? Because I know that every new time I play it is like a renewed enjoyment out of it. And even though it's like I've already seen everything in the game or whatever, or even with speedrunning, even with having done the speedrun multiple times, that is the enjoyment, is the ability to do it over and over again, right? Um, Rhythm games are another example of where you really have to like that exact thing that the rhythm game focuses on. Expedition 33 being the pairing, rhythm games being the, synchronizing your hands with the music and the button presses or whatever. If that's the,
Just play an instrument. Just kidding.
I got him. Yeah. Yeah. So like, if you like that exact thing, then rhythm games are like the game that you're gonna particularly enjoy and gravitate towards, probably. Rubik's Cube equivalently. AAA games, we've mentioned amongst ourselves in our little talks and VCs, how AAA games tend to focus a lot on cutscenes and maybe the gameplay perhaps is missing a little bit. And my personal gripes with Tomb Raider 2013 recently were very evident in that regard, if any of you watched that playthrough. But someone that appreciates having those like movie kind of games can maybe really be drawn to the AAA game experience, and so on and so on. So yeah, thanks for sharing these thoughts, Senryoku. Um, I think if I think if there's anything to take away from this matrix as well, is that the there are like vast different types of games, but nowadays a lot of games are kind of converging towards the same recurring ideas. Retrorage already hinted at it with the roguelites that are infesting the indie space.
Rogue slop.
Yeah. And the numerous Hollow Knight likes as well in the Metrovania side. I mean, there's just so many examples, but it's just that's how
It's just
things.
because
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
yeah. Sorry.
I just feel like gaming is there's so much money in gaming now that if people aren't willing like just make a game that they want to make. They have to cater to quote unquote the people or whatever the
There's so much financial
people is.
risk
Yeah.
associated with the game because you could, games before you can make them a lot faster, a lot cheaper. I mean, Major OOT was made in a very short time frame. Majora's Mask, very short time frame. Melee, very short time frame. Even like all the GTA games, they were all made in like before GTA 4. They were all made in like a relatively compact time frame compared to what we have now, right? But because it takes so much more time, you take on so much more financial risk. So people don't want to be like, oh, what do we want to do, right? They have to
Yeah,
be like, they have to be much more business-like and try to be like, oh, what does um like have a less like purely artistic or creative view and be like, oh, we're making a product now, you know?
Yeah.
Crim-
That
mhm. Crimson Desert, like they were like, let's jam pack it with so many mechanics that you guys are familiar with. The you guys being the gamers, right? Like, apparently they're inspired by various open world games, Zeldas, Dragon's Dogmas, those kinds of games, right? And maybe there's a little bit of a lack of cohesion, but the familiarity is what they would hope to allow to draw more people to their game. But that's where it can potentially confuse things and cause the game to lose its luster. Um, and that's what we're seeing in the indie space right now. All the copycats and homogenizations of individual games that are coming out. It's unfortunate, but it's no surprise because everyone's trying to tap into the lucrative market, and it's I mean, as we mentioned, like people are willing to spend the leisurely time in games that they prefer, right? And if we see that this kind of game, like a Slay the Spire kind of game, roguelike deck builder, is selling a lot, then of course, why not try to tap into that ourselves? So,
yes.
yeah, unfortunate. Do we have any other closing thoughts? Maybe more hopeful closing thoughts than
Oh no, more negatives. Dude, negative Nancy out here. Double N.
okay.
Oh, Rogue the new Prince of Persia game, the roguelike one.
Mm-hmm.
I played my what 6 9 hours, then I stopped playing because
They
it
said six,
uses
seven.
Ascension. Ascension is its main mechanism of not it's not just tied to the gameplay, right? The narrative is also tied to Ascension. In order to like get the true ending, you have to play through all the Ascensions uh, to, to get the true ending, right? And now I have a question to weigh. Like, am I willing to spend the time running through Ascension modes to get the true ending, right? Am I willing to spend the time? And this was when did not have a job. I did not have a job, right? I was jobless. My answer was no, right? I
Mm.
was not willing to spend the time to run through Ascension or a true ending. So I finished the game on the normal ending or like resets, right? And it because where discussion is about okay, whether having a job or not having a job like affects your decision on whether or not you play a game or not, right? And you have to make all these determinations on like okay, like for example, if you have a job and you have a family, like, think about how do you even play video games, right? Like I think about like my brother, he has a job and he has a family. He doesn't play video games anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There's just no way. There's just no way, right? There's just no time to play video games, right? And for example, these games, that's why roguelites maybe are so popular because you can do it in short bursts, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like you play the game, but it's like a 40-minute run, right? Versus what's it called like a normal typical AAA game Like for example, I recently played Horizon, right? That's like a 60-hour game. To play 1 hour of that, you would need to play the game over 60 days worth of time, right? Theoretically, if you were doing 1 hour every day, right? And it might not be contiguous. It's not like, oh, I play 1 hour today and I play 1 hour tomorrow. I play another hour tomorrow. It might be like 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours every week, right? Think about to play one game, Horizon Forbidden West, over 1 to 2 hours every week would take you what? 30 weeks. 30 weeks. That's half a year almost,
Mhm.
right? To play one video game versus you could have played Slay the Spire 60 times. You guys get what I'm putting down?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
for those games that have like a story narrative or it's like a linear sequencing, like to pick it up and to continue it for over half a year, that's difficult, right? And to pick it up and remember what you're doing, also very difficult, right? Versus these roguelikes are small, condensed, concentrated gaming in short time spans, which is why I think it might be very appealing to the modern person who has no time, right? You guys
Yeah.
get what I'm putting down?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I think that's spot on. And yeah, I guess that's also why it's also just easier for the devs, right? Like they don't have to really think about the scope of the replayability or the scope of the content as much when you build it in like a roguelike deck builder format or roguelite in general. Whereas if it's a 60-hour AAA game, there's a reason why they have these large teams at these AAA companies, right? I mean, I say there's a reason they don't really need to have that many people that they're working on them, but that's besides the point. Like, it requires a lot of resources, nonetheless.
Which is why it baffles me that there's padding in any video game,
Right.
right? With Mio with this 1 minute run back, like, like it baffles me
Yeah.
that they make decisions like this and people eat it up, dude. And people eat it up, dude.
Yep.
It's confusing, dude. It's like a mix of masochism and I don't know, gamer elitism, dude. I don't know where these populations are coming from where they're like, yes, I want to spend like why did dude people Dark Souls retroactively kind of got more popular
Yeah.
somehow, right? Elden Ring, you know what? For all my hate for From Software, Elden Ring not that bad, right? Elden Ring, you got a horse that moves way faster. There's all these much more quality of life, right? And then people go to play Dark Souls. They're like, oh, Dark Souls is the greatest game of all time or something. And I'm like, huh? How did we go from that? Like, if you said Elden Ring was a great video game, you know what? I'd be like, you know what? Okay, right? I'd be like, okay, okay. I would find that an acceptable answer. To go and say that, oh, Dark Souls great is freaking peak when I have to deal with nonsense enemies and there's all these questionable mechanics and you can just like Wuchang, like miss NPCs or they just die out of nowhere. Or you can just completely miss them and they're very not necessarily integral, but will shape your gameplay in significant manners. Right? I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
One thing I forgot to bring up, and I'll keep it brief because I should have brought this up earlier. The idea of like, you got to cope with your purchase. There's definitely a crowd of people that are like, but I spent this money on this game. I got to try to find the enjoyment out of it before the end of the game. So willingness to cope through that is definitely a part of it, which I'm sure factored into Mio's turnaround on Steam because Mio has had a sharp turnaround in the review rating since it released.
All the paid actors finally left the studio, dude.
Yeah. You know, I understand it though because there's I mean okay actually never mind. I thought I was being clever. This actually just loops back to the thing we were talking about in the beginning of the episode with what was I saying? Like when people spend money on the game, it's like they're trying to get the value out of it, the value for the money, right? But it just loops back to that. The idea that, you know, I made this purchase, I can't refund it anymore, so just gotta try to get the enjoyment out of it. And I've seen people on the subreddit, RSS Metroid subreddit, say this exact thing, so I know that it is a sentiment that exists. And trust me, I'm not strawmanning these things. Like they are genuine. So
You know, the point about bringing it back to the beginning, how Moxie was talking about Baldur's Gate, right? I want to point out that you know what I am surprised by? How strong, how like vibes can carry a person through a game, like legitimately.
yeah.
Because in my opinion, I feel like vibes are very superficial. Right? It's like a superficial thing. It's not very deep. But like if I look at the
Don't get
results,
vibes.
vibes are like hard carrying these games. People are like slogging through it just purely from vibes, right? Like people are going through Mio. Like if I played Mio, I would have instantly uninstalled. I wouldn't even have purchased the game, right? Like honestly, genuinely, I would have not purchased the game. But the vibe of Mio lets it not only makes the person purchase the game, but play through it through its entirety,
Yep, that's true.
right? And for me, like from my perspective, or I believe vibes is like very superficial. I look at that and I'm like, dang, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's crazy for like Baldur's Gate 3, right? The art vibe, the vibe of D&D, the artist, the voice acting, right? These are the vibes that are carrying that game like to the finish line, right? You get what I'm saying? And it's that's something I'm genuinely surprised by, like how vibes convert into gameplay time, right? It's just something. Just something I'm saying it out there. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on this, but whether like your job, you have a job, you have all this valuable time, or you don't have a job, you still valuable time, and the vibe is enough to convert your time into putting it into the game, right? That's crazy to me. That's crazy.
Okay. My only example
Mhm.
recently, and maybe I can think of more, but I'll just keep it brief because running out of time. But Valkyrie Profile 1 definitely vibes carried me through. Because I mean there were definitely slow moments, unskippable cutscenes, mind you, and lots of dungeons that had long stretches without save points, so I was just constantly save stating and stuff because, you know, I'm like, okay, I don't want to lose the progress I did from tonight, and I want to keep myself relatively stress free and enjoying myself, so I'm just going to do these things, right? Power of save states, by the way. But vibes definitely got me through what would otherwise just be like, okay, man, this is like a, you know, 10-minute long unskippable cutscene, very nice, you know. But the gameplay was like that good where I wouldn't be as bothered about it. I know it sounds like from all the things I've said in this episode that like why would I like Valkyrie Profile 1 then? But like the gameplay in that game is really good. You know, it's not just like a vibes game. The vibes like only prop up further the gameplay. And unfortunately, because of unskippable cutscenes, it's brought down slightly, but brought up by the fact that the gameplay is self-sufficient.
For me, I don't know. I never mentioned the vibes thing because I am not a vibes person. I don't like nothing I do with my time is going to be propped up by vibes like ever, right?
Mm.
I don't listen to music based off vibes. Most people do. I don't, and I don't get it. Um, I won't play a game based off vibes. Like I'm going to, and I think playing like doing something based off of vibes requires like entering a certain like more passive headspace where you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna like take it in or whatever, and let the vibe roll out. And I am not a person who does that. Like I actively will engage with everything that a game or something has to offer. And so like I just don't have, I just can't see it from the other side. Like I'm not saying the other side is wrong or anything, but it's just something I can't see, and that's why I didn't bring it up earlier. It's just like,
Yeah, it makes
it's
sense. Yeah, same,
yeah,
same.
and it's just like, oh, people like play Hollow Knight based off of, or like Elden Ring or something based off vibes. It's not the only reason, but it's
Certainly a major reason.
yeah. Yeah,
I
with Baldur's
yeah.
Gate 3, I don't know. I would say something, but a driver would probably get mad
We
at me
can
if I
yeah, we
said
can
it.
keep it. We can keep it. You know, if we
We
want to
can
wrap
keep
this
it
up,
on.
we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a victim of it. I mean, I'll play a game if I like the music enough, and that'll get me through it. Certainly the case with both Mirror's Edge games. Okay. Any last thoughts, Frafro?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, so we'll close it off then. So yeah, in this
Thank you
episode,
guys for listening.
yep, thanks everyone for listening. We really appreciate it, and those of you that are listening through YouTube Music as well, we appreciate that. Yeah, in this episode we talked about perspectives on video games as leisure. This entailed, whether perspectives varied or not based on the fact that you have limited time to play games, maybe because you're a working person or not, or maybe because you'd rather spend the time on other activities or other hobbies. And we came to the conclusion that maybe it varies per person, but at the end of the day, certain factors inform one's ability to determine whether something is well spent leisurely on video games or not. And these factors are just numerous to count and also vary per person. But at the end of the day, it's worth taking all these things into account because various games do have features that might be trying to draw a certain audience. And if those features get in the way of their ability to highlight the strengths that drew that initial audience in the first place, then it might be doing itself a disservice. We touched on fighting games as examples. We touched on Souls-like, such as Wuchang and Dark Souls 3. We talked about Baldur's Gate 3. We talked about roguelites and roguelite deck builders. We talked about the indie space with its Metroidvanias and stuff. There's numerous examples that we didn't touch on as well. But at the end of the day, there's various things that need to be accounted for when we think of what value a mechanic has in a game or what value certain games even have when it comes to how people want to decide to spend their time. Because at the end of the day, people like time is valuable in this world, and people that want to play a video game as a pastime are most likely looking for something enjoyable to do. So you want to leverage that as much as possible with whatever game you're building. So yeah, this has been myself, K-Drive, fraufraw, Moxie, and Retrorage. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. This has been Drivers Discourse episode 4. Catch you on the next one.